The alley was cold, dark, and silent. A soft wind blew between the broken walls. Carrying the smell of garbage and rust, Zero sat on the ground, her knees pulled to her chest, and her arms wrapped around herself. She wore nothing but a torn dress and a thin coat. Her long silver hair was messy, her face pale, and her eyes empty. She hadn't eaten in 3 days. Her stomach hurt, but she was used to that now. The real pain came from the way people looked at her, didn't look at her at all. Every night, different aliens passed through the alley. They were loud, laughing, holding food tokens, throwing coins at girls standing by the wall. Some of those girls danced, some begged, some offered more. Oh, they were hungry too, but they had already crossed the line Zero feared. Zero had always believed in dignity, but hunger didn't care about pride. Tonight, her fingers trembled as she pulled the coat tighter around her body. Her lips were dry, and her eyes blurred from weakness. She looked up at the neon signs, blinking above red, blue, green, shining down on a world that had no place for her. All I have are my clothes, she whispered to herself. Her voice cracked like dry paper. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. No one ever stopped, no one ever asked her name. She saw another alien girl across the alley laughing with a customer. She was wearing less than Zero, but in her hands real food, a bowl of hot noodles. Steam rising in the cold air, Zero's mouth watered. Her fingers moved on their own. Slowly untying her coat, her heart beat fast. She felt ashamed, scared, and desperate all at once. But her stomach was louder than her fear tonight. Zero stood up, slowly, legs shaking. She walked toward the alley's edge, where the lights were brighter and people were watching. Every step felt heavy. The coat hung open, showing her thin frame. She looked at the ground, not wanting to meet anyone's eyes. A group of alien men passed by, laughing, drunk. One of them noticed her and said something in a language she didn't understand. The others laughed louder. Zero felt like a broken toy someone had thrown away. She wanted to run, but she had nowhere to go, no home, no family, no one waiting, only the cold and the hunger. Suddenly, a voice spoke from the shadows behind her. Stop. It was not loud, but it was firm. Zero froze. Her heart racing, she turned slowly, her eyes wide with fear. A man stepped out from the darkness. He was human, tall, wearing a long coat and gloves. His eyes were calm, but serious. In his hands something white, a food container, warm and full. Zero's stomach growled loudly. She didn't speak, just stared at him like a frightened animal. He didn't come closer, just placed the food box on the ground between them. Then he stepped back, hands raised to show he meant no harm. You don't need to do that, he said softly. I saw you. I saw what you were about to do. Zero looked at the food, then at him. She didn't trust him. Why would she? But her legs moved anyway, crawling forward slowly. She grabbed the container with both hands and opened it. The smell hit her like a wave of real rice, vegetables, protein cubes. She didn't wait. She ate with her fingers, fast, desperate. Tears fell from her eyes as she ate, but she didn't stop. The man didn't interrupt, just stood there in silence. When she was done, she looked up. Why? She asked, barely a whisper. The man smiled. A small, sad smile, because someone once helped me when I had nothing, he said. Now it's my turn. Zero shook her head, confused. Are you going to take me? She asked, her voice shaking. He looked surprised, then sad. No, he said. I'm not here to take you. I'm here to give you something. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded blanket. He placed it near her and pointed toward the end of the alley. There's a warm place, a safe place, he said. You don't have to sleep out here anymore. Zero looked at the blanket, then back at him. Why should I trust you? She asked. You shouldn't, he replied. But if you follow me, you'll eat again tomorrow. For a long moment, Zero didn't move. The wind blew again, colder this time. She wrapped the blanket around her and stood up. The man turned and started walking away, slowly, giving her space. Zero looked one last time at the street behind her, had the girls, the lights, the noise. Then she followed him into the shadows. Not knowing if she was walking into danger or hope, but knowing she couldn't stay in the alley anymore. Zero followed. The human through the narrow alley. Her bare feet touched the cold ground as she wrapped the blanket tighter around her body. The man didn't look back or rush. He walked slowly, letting her decide if she truly wanted to come. He turned a corner and tapped twice on a metal door. It opened with a soft buzz and warm light spilled out. Zero stopped at the entrance, inside. She saw a small room with old furniture and blankets on the floor, the smell of soup and something sweet filled the air. Her stomach growled again, but she stayed still, unsure. The man turned to her and said, "It's okay, come in." She stepped inside. And the door closed behind her with a soft hiss. The warmth hugged her skin like sunlight. After years of rain, she looked around, expecting traps, chains, or cameras. But all she saw were quiet faces, 3 other aliens, and a robot. Each of them looked up at her without surprise or judgment. "This is Zira," the man said to the room. "She's staying with us tonight." The others nodded. One of them, a tall blue alien woman, smiled gently. Zira didn't speak. She stood near the wall, her hands tight on the blanket. The man took off his coat and placed it on a hook. "I'm Daniel," he said. Looking at her, "I'm human, like you saw." Zero gave a small nod. "Hungry again?" he asked. She hesitated, but then whispered, "Yes." Daniel walked to a small kitchen area and poured hot soup into a metal bowl. He handed it to her carefully, as if handing a flower. Zero sat on a thin cushion in the corner and slowly drank. The heat filled her chest, warming places that had been cold for years. "Where are you from?" one of the other aliens asked. Zero didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the soup, afraid the kindness might vanish if she blinked. Daniel spoke instead. "Zero doesn't have to talk right now," he said. "She needs rest, warmth, and time." The others nodded again, understanding something Zero didn't. It was not the first time someone broken had walked through that door. After the meal, Daniel gave her a small pillow and pointed to a quiet corner with folded blankets. Zero didn't say thank you. She didn't know how anymore, but as she lay down, her eyes watered. She hadn't felt safe in a long time. The blanket smelled clean, like old cotton and soap, and for the first time in many nights, she fell asleep without fear. When she woke up, the light outside was dim. Morning or evening, she couldn't tell. The room was still quiet, but not empty. Daniel sat near the wall, working on a small box with blinking lights. Zira sat up slowly, her blanket falling from her shoulders. Daniel looked at her and smiled. "Good sleep?" he asked. She nodded once, unsure of what to say. He handed her a cup of warm tea, and she took it with both hands. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. Zira looked at him, confused. "Most people who help want something," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I'm not most people." He turned the blinking box toward her. "You know tech?" he asked. Zero blinked, then nodded slowly. "My father. He taught me." Daniel's smile grew wider. "Good. Then maybe you can help me fix this." Zero sat beside him and examined the device. It was an old signal jammer, simple but damaged. She pulled a few wires and adjusted a chip within minutes. The blinking stopped and turned solid green. Daniel clapped gently. "Impressive," he said. "You could help us more than you know." Zira looked at him, unsure what he meant. He explained. "Place this group where survivors. Refugees, outcasts, some hunted. We protect each other. Stay hidden and help others like you." Zira felt a small flicker inside. It wasn't hope yet, but it was something close. She didn't say much, but when she stood up and asked for more broken devices, Daniel smiled again that night. Zero helped the blue alien woman. Her name was Vera. Cook dinner. They made protein stew with wild herbs. Zero cut vegetables, her hands still shaky. But she didn't drop the knife. Everyone sat in a circle to eat, and Daniel said, "Let's thank Zero for fixing the comm-jammer." They clapped lightly, and Zero blushed. She looked down but smiled for the first time in many days. After dinner, Daniel showed her a small drawer with spare clothes. She chose a plain shirt and pants, soft and warm. She folded her old coat and placed it in the corner. "All I had were my clothes," she whispered again, "but now, at ease. I have more, outside, in the streets above." Danger still waited, but inside this small room Zero had warmth, food, and maybe even a future. Zero woke up before the others. The room was still dark, but a soft yellow light glowed from a small lamp. She stretched her arms and looked around. Blankets were scattered, soft snores filled the air, and the smell of soup still lingered. For the first time in months, her body didn't ache from cold. She touched her clean shirt and smiled a little. It felt like she had borrowed someone else's life, warm, safe, and unreal. She walked slowly to the kitchen corner and found a small cup of water. She sipped it quietly, not wanting to wake anyone, on a shelf nearby. She saw a row of strange devices, broken and dusty. Her fingers itched to open them. She always loved fixing things. It made her feel useful. Not like trash on the street, not like an unwanted ghost. As she reached for a damaged scanner, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Daniel, half awake. His hair messy. "You're up early," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I couldn't sleep." "Any more?" she replied. "Good," he said with a smile. "Then you can help me fix these today." Zero followed him into the back room. It was small, but full of tech batteries, wires, old drones, broken tablets. Daniel handed her a toolkit. "No cages here," he said. "You're free to do what you're good at." Zero blinked, confused. "No cages?" she asked. He nodded. "Many of us were once trapped prisons. Slave camps, hunger, but here. We build, we live, we protect each other." Zira sat at a table and opened the scanner. Her hands moved carefully, but with skill. Daniel watched from a distance, noticing the way her eyes lit up when the circuits clicked into place. She fixed the scanner in minutes, then moved on to a broken wrist light. She didn't speak much, but her actions said everything she wanted to belong later. That morning, Veritha, tall blue alien woman, called everyone for breakfast. Zero joined the group, still unsure how to act. They didn't ask her questions, didn't stare. They just passed her food and made space beside them. It was strange, this quiet kindness. She wasn't used to it. Every bite of stew felt like it was melting her fears. After breakfast, Daniel gathered everyone. "We need to check the north tunnel today," he said. "There were movement signals last night. Could be the syndicate again." Syrah frowned. "The syndicate?" she asked. "They control the city," Daniel explained. "They don't like people like us. People who don't fit." He didn't need to say more. Zira understood. She had lived on the streets long enough to know the syndicate didn't care who lived or died. Later, Daniel took Zira to the tunnel with him. It was cold and dark, with metal walls and dripping pipes. Zira carried a sensor tool she had repaired earlier. It beeped softly with every step, scanning for life signs or cameras. "I used to come down here as a child," Daniel said. "This place was once part of a mining colony. Now, it's a graveyard." Zira looked around at the rusted walls. "Not anymore," she said. "Now it's a home." Daniel smiled. "Maybe one day. We'll make it more than that. A safe zone. A free city. Where no one has to strip for food." Zira looked at him, surprised by his words. She wasn't used to hope. Hope had always betrayed her, but Daniel made it sound real, like it was something they could actually build together. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, Zira's scanner beeped louder. She stopped, kneeling near a cracked wall. "There's something behind here," she whispered. Anyal crouched beside her. Together, they pushed the loose panels and uncovered an old door. It creaked open, revealing a small, hidden room full of old supplies food packs. Tools, even a solar charger. Zira gasped. "This could help so many," she said. Daniel nodded. "You found it?" he saved. "You've saved us time." And Liv's, Zira felt warmth in her chestnut just from the find. But from his words, she mattered here. She was not a burden, not trash. She was part of something. When they returned to the shelter, the others cheered at the supplies. Vara hugged Zira lightly. "You're a blessing," she said. Zira blushed, again not knowing how to respond. That night, as the group sat around the fire, Daniel told a story about his old life, about the war that had taken everything from him, about how he had almost given up till someone helped him. Kindness saved me, he said, so I try to pass it on. Zira listened quietly, then whispered, "I had nothing but my clothes, but today I found a home." Everyone smiled, and no one said anything more. They didn't need to. Zira looked around the room. Blankets, tools, quiet laughter, warm lights, no cages, no fear. Only family, only freedom. Zira woke up to the sound of humming. It wasn't from a person, but from the solar charger she had helped uncover. It now sat in the center of the shelter, gently glowing as it absorbed light from a modified ceiling lamp. The others were already moving around, cleaning, cooking, fixing wires. Zira sat up and smiled. She didn't feel useless anymore. Vara handed her a small breakfast. A warm, sweet roll and tea. Zira took it with both hands, bowing slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "You earned it." Vara replied with a kind smile, after eating. Zira walked over to the tech corner. Daniel had left out more damaged equipment: tryst pads, drone parts, a broken signal booster. Zira's eyes sparkled as she sat down. She tied her long silver hair back and started working. Sparks flew gently as she soldered wires and reconnected circuits. Her hands were steady now, confident. Daniel watched from the side. "You're fast," he said, impressed. Zira looked up with a soft grin. "I used to build small bots with my father," she said. "We called them helpers." Daniel sat beside her, listening. She rarely spoke about her past. It was the first time he saw her eyes shine, not from tears, but from memory. That afternoon, a small boy came into the shelter. He was about 6 years old, with dirty clothes and bruises on his arms. He didn't speak, just looked around with wide, scared eyes. Zira saw herself in him, cold, alone, hungry. She stood up and walked over slowly. She knelt beside him and offered a fruit cube. The boy took it and began to eat, tears running down his face. Daniel stepped forward. "His name is Kalon," he said softly. "He ran away from a syndicate child camp." Zira's heart ached. She knew what those camps were like: silent, brutal places, places that killed dreams and replaced them with fear. That night, Zira gave Kalon her own blanket and stayed beside him. He clung to her like a lost kitten finding warmth. She whispered soft stories to help him sleep, stories her father once told her, of flying machines, sky oceans, and stars that sang at night for the first time in a long time. She felt like more than just a girl who had survived. She felt like someone who could protect, who could give, who could heal. The next morning, Daniel asked her to come with him to the tunnel workshop. "We're building something special," he said. She followed him with curiosity. Inside, they found old frames, wires, a worn engine, and blueprints on a wall. "We're making a scout drone," Daniel said. "It can help us watch the syndicate's movement, keep the shelter safe." Zira's fingers twitched with excitement. She examined the pieces, already building it in her mind. Daniel watched her, then stepped back. "It's yours," he said. Zero looked up in shock. "You lead this project now." She felt something rise in her chest. Pride, fear, purpose. She nodded, picked up the tools, and got to work. Days passed, and the drone slowly came to life. Zero worked late into the night, with Kaylin nearby drawing pictures or sleeping beside her. The others offered help, but Zero led the process. She redesigned old parts, added stealth coding, and wrote new code. She tested every piece twice, sometimes 3 times. Each time the machine beeped, blinked, or moved, her heart soared. Daniel came one evening holding a small gift. It was a badge homemade from scrap metal, shaped like a tiny flame. "For the girl with the spark," he said as he handed it to her. Zero took it, eyes wide. She didn't speak, but she wore the badge proudly on her shirt. The day came when the drone was ready for flight. Everyone gathered in the main room to watch. Zero placed the drone on the ground and connected her wrist controller. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. The drone lifted into the air, hovering with a soft preside. Hum! It turned left, right, scanned the tunnel, and returned with data. The crowd clapped. Some even cheered. Zira turned to them, blushing. Daniel raised his hand and said, "This is how we fight back, not with guns, but with minds, with people like Zira." Tears welled up in Zira's eyes. Not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt. In a long time belonging, she looked down at her old coat folded in the corner. It was a reminder of where she came from. But today, she wore more than clothes. She wore courage, skill, and trust. The shelter wasn't just a place anymore. It was a home, and Zira girl once forgotten was now its beating heart. The girl with a spark had become a flame. The drone worked perfectly for 2 weeks. It flew through tunnels, scanned nearby streets, and returned with clear data. Zira updated its code daily, making it faster and smarter. The shelter became quieter, safer, more peaceful. The refugees had more food, more warmth, and even moments of laughter. But peace never lasted long in a city ruled by the Syndicate. One morning, while Zira was teaching Kaylin how to build a toy bot, the drone returned with strange readings. Its sensors had picked up Movement 6 lifeforms just outside the alley entrance. Zira frowned and replayed the images. The shapes were large, armored, and carried energy rifles. Her hands began to shake. She ran to Daniel, holding the data. "Pad, they're coming," she said. "Syndicate hunters." Daniel looked at the footage, his face turning cold. "They've found us," he whispered. The words spread through the shelter like fire. Panic filled the air. Vara gathered everyone. In the main room, Daniel stood before them, his voice steady. "We don't know how they found us," he said, "but we don't run, not yet." Zero stood beside him, clutching the drone controller. "We can block their path," she said. "There are old maintenance gates. If we close them, we can slow them down." Daniel nodded. "Zero, take the drone and check the western tunnels. Vara, gather supplies and lead the children to the backup shelter. I'll handle the explosives." The shelter turned into a hive of action. Zira sent the drone ahead while she followed on foot. Her heart pounded with every step. She wasn't the scared girl in the alley anymore, but fear still lived inside her. She reached the first gate and hacked the control panel. Sparks flew, the system clicked, and the gate slammed shut. One path blocked, she moved to the next, crawling through a pipe, avoiding broken wires and sharp metal. The drone hovered nearby, its light blinking calmly as she reached the second gate. She heard voices, Syndicate soldiers only meters away. Zero pressed herself against the wall, holding her breath. Their boots echoed in the tunnel. One of them stopped, scanning the area. Zira's fingers gripped a loose pipe, ready to fight if needed. Then a loud crack echoed from the other side of the tunnel, Daniel's trap. The soldiers shouted and ran toward the noise. Zero wasted no time. She hacked the second gate and sealed it shut. Her hands were bleeding from cuts. But she didn't care. She rushed back toward the shelter, drone flying behind her. The tunnels shook as another blast rang out Daniel's work. She reached the main room and found everyone still there. "Why haven't you left?" she shouted. Vera replied, "One child is missing, Callan." Zira's heart dropped. He must have gone back for his drawing book. Without a word, Zira turned and ran back down the hall. She didn't wait for Daniel or anyone else. Her feet slammed against the ground, breath sharp, eyes scanning every corner. She turned into the sleeping Ariand. There he was. Callan sat on the floor, holding a small bag of drawings. Tears on his cheeks. "Zira," he cried, "I forgot these." Zira knelt beside him and wiped his face. "It's okay," she said, "but we need to go now." She picked him up and ran. But behind her, the door burst open. 3 syndicate soldiers stood there, weapons raised. Zira backed into a hallway. Holding Callan tight, she looked around. No escape. Her drone hovered behind her, blinking rapidly. She remembered its hidden feature, the stun pulse. She activated it. The drone buzzed loudly, then released a bright flash. The soldiers screamed, blinded and shocked. Zira ran, heart pounding, legs burning. She reached the shelter just as the others were preparing to escape. Daniel grabbed Callan and checked him. "He's fine," he said, eyes meeting Zira's. "You saved him that night." The group moved to a deeper hideout, a forgotten water reservoir far below the city. It was colder, darker, but safe for now. Everyone was quiet. Tired, afraid, Zira sat alone near the wall, her hands wrapped in cloth. Her body aching, Daniel came over and sat beside her. "You were brave," he said. "I was scared," she replied. "But you didn't stop," he said. Zira looked at the ground. "They almost had us." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "They didn't," he said. "Because of you." Zira looked around at the people resting, eating, whispering. Because of her, they were alive. She was no longer just the starving girl in the alley. She was a fighter, a protector, and the syndicate would learn she wasn't afraid anymore. The old reservoir was cold and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling like a clock ticking in the dark. The refugees sat close to each other, trying to stay warm. No one laughed now, no one smiled. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Zira sat near the edge of the group, her back against the wall. Her arms were wrapped around her knees. She stared at her hands, still shaking. Still cut. Daniel walked over, handing her a small cup of warm tea. "Drink," he said. "You've done more than enough." But Zira didn't take the cup. "No," she said, her voice low but strong. "It's not over." Daniel sat beside her, quiet. He had seen the change in her. She was no longer a broken girl hiding in shadows. She had become something else, something stronger. "The syndicate won't stop," Zira said. "We need to fight back." Daniel looked around at the tired faces, the injured children, the frightened elders. "They're not soldiers," he said. Zira nodded. "Then I'll be the soldier." Later that night, she sat alone in the tech corner of the hideout. She pulled out the drone's control board and connected it to an old map system. She watched syndicate patrol paths, scanned radio signals, and marked every weak spot. Her eyes burned, her head throbbed, but she didn't stop. Callan walked over. Holding a drawing, it showed her an armor, flying with the drone. "You're like a hero," he said. Zira smiled weakly and whispered, "I'm just trying to survive." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about standing for those who couldn't fight. At sunrise, she met with Daniel, Vara, and 2 other trusted members. She spread out the map and pointed to a narrow tunnel. "They bring supplies through here," she said. "If we strike here, we slow them down." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You want to attack them?" Zira nodded. "Just enough to make them think we're more than we are." Vara looked unsure. "What if they retaliate harder?" Zero looked into her eyes and said, "They already are. The plan was simple: trap the transport, disable. There comes, scare them, then disappear." Zira and Daniel led a small group through an old waterway. They carried wire traps, flash grenades, and hacked drones. The tunnel was silent except for the sound of boots splashing in puddles. Zira moved. Like a shadow, fast and focused, she placed the traps herself, hands steady, heart ready. Daniel whispered, "You sure about this?" She didn't answer, just gave a single nod. They waited in the dark, hiding behind old pipes. Moments later, Syndicate guards appeared, 3 armored soldiers, walking ahead of a floating supply crate. Zero waited until they stepped into the trap zone. Then she pressed the trigger. Sparks flew. Wires tightened around their legs. One of the drones dropped a flash bomb. Blinding them with white light, Zira and the team moved fast, grabbing the weapons and dragging the supplies into a side tunnel. It was over in less than a minute. The guards were knocked out, not killed, just left behind, confused. Daniel looked at her, impressed. "That was clean," he said. Zero wiped sweat from her forehead and replied, "We send a message now." Back in the hideout, people cheered when they saw the supplies: food, batteries, clean water. Children danced. And for the first time in days, hope returned. Zero didn't smile. She sat down and began writing on a metal plate. Daniel watched her carefully. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Sending a message," she said. She tied the plate to a drone and flew it toward the Syndicate patrol routes. On the plate, she had written in bold letters, "We are not weak. We are not alone. We will not be silent." That night, Zero sat beside Kalen as he fell asleep. He held her hand, and for the first time, he didn't cry. "You're not scared anymore?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because you're here?" Her throat tightened. She had become something more than a fighter. She had become someone others believed in. Daniel sat nearby, watching her in silence. "She fights like a soldier," he whispered to Vara, "but she leads like a flame." Hours later, Syndicate scanners picked up the drone. They read the message. They searched the tunnels, but the refugees had already moved deeper. The enemy now knew. Someone inside the shadows had teeth, and her name was Zira. The girl who once whispered, "All I have are my clothes," was now a spark that refused to go out. The air inside the deep tunnels was thin and heavy, but it was peaceful. The group had moved again, this time to an old power station hidden below the city's forgotten layers. Zero stood near a broken window, looking out at the dark rock walls. Her eyes weren't scared anymore. They were focused, strong, behind her. The shelter had changed. The people moved with purpose now. They cleaned, they cooked, they fixed. Oh, they weren't hiding anymore. They were living. Zero turned as Daniel approached. He held a small box in his hand. "You've done something impossible," he said. Zira tilted her head, curious. "You gave these people hope," he added, opening the box. Inside was a small communicator chip with a carved Marxeer's flame symbol. "It's a signal," Daniel said. "A way to contact others like us across the lower cities." Zira took the chip and nodded. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. That evening, she sat with Kalen and a few of the children. She taught them how to connect wires and build simple light devices. Kalen laughed when his light blinked green. "You're like a teacher now," he said. Zira smiled. "Maybe." Across the room, Vara and Daniel watched. "She's becoming the heart of this place," Vara said. Daniel nodded. She turned pain into power. Later that night, the silence was broken by a soft alarm. One of the drones had returned with damaged wings and shaky movement. Zero rushed to catch it before it fell. The camera footage showed Syndicate ships landing near the upper tunnels. More soldiers, heavier armor, and a larger search team. "They're not giving up," Daniel said. Zira's fingers moved fast across her pad, scanning patterns. "No. But they're guessing," she replied. They still don't know where we are, only that we're nearby." She looked at the group. Now over 40 people strong, they had made it this far. They couldn't run forever, but they could fight smart. Zero gathered everyone. "We've been running. Hiding, surviving," she said, standing on a crate so all could see her. "But what if we did more? What if we built something that lasts?" People listened, quiet. "The syndicate takes everything," she continued. "But here, look around. We have built something new. Not perfect, not safe, but ours." A murmur rose among the group. Daniel stepped forward. "We start small," he said. "We help others like we helped Zira." Zira looked at the people, many of whom had once avoided her eyes. Now they looked up to her. Over the next few days, the group got to work. They turned the power station into something better. Wires were fixed, rooms were cleaned, and broken machines became tools. Zira and Daniel connected signal repeaters and sent out safe codes to nearby resistant cells. One morning, a reply came. Another small group, lost, hungry, alone, had received the signal. They were coming. Zira prepared rooms, food, and even small lights to welcome them when they arrived. Zira stood at the entrance with a soft smile. A small alien girl stepped forward. Wearing a dress far too big for her, she looked up and whispered, "Are you the one who sent the light?" Zira knelt down and said, "Yes." The girl ran into her arms, holding tight. Behind her, more followed. Daniel watched with quiet pride. "She used to be the one needing rescue," Vara said beside him. "And now she's rescuing others." Zira helped the newcomers settle. She gave them food, warmth, and safety. No one asked where they came from. No one judged. That night, the room was full of quiet voices, laughter, and the smell of hot stew. Zira sat near the center, Kaylin asleep beside her. One of the newcomers asked, "Are you in charge here?" Zira looked around, then shook her head gently. "No," she said, "we all are." Daniel came over and handed her something small, her old coat, now repaired and cleaned. "I kept it," he said. "Thought you'd want it back." Zira held it in her hands, eyes soft. She remembered the night she almost gave everything away for a meal. The girl in the alley was gone. She folded the coat and placed it on a high shelf. "I don't need it anymore," she whispered. "I have more now." Before sleep, Kaylin opened one eye and looked at her. "Zira?" He asked sleepily. "Yes, if you're not alone anymore," he said. Zira smiled, kissed his forehead, and said, "No, I'm not." She looked at the people. The lights, the warmth. It wasn't just a shelter anymore. It was a home, a family. And she, once cold, hungry, and forgotten, was now their fire. "All I had were my clothes," she had once whispered in the dark, but now she had something no syndicate could ever take away. She had love, she had courage, she had a family, and she would protect them with everything she had.